Darcy works closely with event marketers and planners who understand the value of event content and want to leverage it to achieve a higher ROI long after their event is over. She represents Evia. I should have asked. Okay.
Yep.
Whew. A woman owned company that specializes in event media, live streaming, and content capture. Evia has been a trusted partner in events for over 25 years. In her free time, Darcy enjoys trying new restaurants, art, hiking, and traveling. So let's give it up for Darcy in her presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. The first breakout session after the poker tournament. I am very honored that you're all in the room right now. And I'm super, super excited to talk with you guys about my absolute favorite topic, hybrid events. This time we're going to take a focus on hybrid events for marketers and for event marketers specifically. So thank you so much for having me today. Just a quick couple sentences about me. I started in the digital events world back in 2013 when I, along with my business partner, started an online leadership conference for women. This was back in 2013, so technology was really different back then. The concept was still kind of new and evolving, and it actually amazes me how much has changed in even just the past 6 years. But it's always super exciting for me to get to talk to event planners in my job today at Evia about what they want to do with events, how they want to achieve their goals using live streaming and content capture. So we're going to get in and kind of talk about some of that stuff today. So what we are going to dive into is why you should have an event content marketing strategy, how to create a hybrid event. We'll get into the nitty-gritty since you guys are planners and you guys are going to want to know the step-by-steps there. And then, most importantly, how to leverage your content to develop long-term event attendees, customers, and brand and event loyalty. So before I jump in, I want to make sure that everything I'm talking about is super relevant to you guys. So I want to just do a quick poll of who's in the room. So raise your hand if right now you are planning events or involved with events that are currently capturing or recording all of the sessions. Okay, not that many, because most of the people who raised their hand were from my team. That's good, that's perfect. I'm gonna make this super easy for you guys then. Now raise your hand if you guys have any experience with your events in live streaming. Awesome, cool. Perfect, well then let's get started. Kind of want to chat with you guys about the stages of an event marketing team, or sort of like the evolution of an event marketing team. And this would be mostly like, if you guys are an event planner, your clients, so like where they're at. So when an event marketing team is just starting out, they're usually focused on sponsoring someone else's event, right? So these are your trade show people, these are people that are like, hey, put my logo all over your event. And then they see that that gets a lot of traction, that gets a lot of attention, generates sales and marketing. So they say, okay, this event thing, it's working. Now we're gonna try and host our own event. So the event marketing team will keep sponsoring, but then they'll also start hosting their events. And we're starting to see that more and more with companies, especially tech companies, hosting their own big user conferences or their big, just basically ways to get people that are their target customers or their existing customers in the room. Then event marketers are like, okay, sponsoring events has been super successful for us. Hosting events has been super successful for us. What's next? What's the next stage in this evolution? And the answer is hybrid events. What we're starting to see is successful event marketers are then taking the next step to reach a bigger audience with hybrid events. Hence why this stuff is super important. And there's a reason for all of this. I didn't just make this up. This is from Harvard. Like, how are you going to argue with Harvard? They studied the fastest growing companies in America, and they defined fastest growing companies as 30% revenue growth year over year. And what they found is marketers said that events drove more business value than any other marketing channel. This is a big deal. If it's the number one for half of the companies that are growing the fastest, of those same people, 54% said that they're boosting their event marketing budget year over year, and then 4 in 10 say that they're gonna spend more money on hosting their own events. Obviously, you guys all know this because you are event planners. This is why we're all still in business. But now we want to make sure that we're keeping on top of the evolution for the event marketing teams into hybrid events. So before I go any farther, let's just kind of baseline, what even is a hybrid event? Because when I say it, it might mean different things to different people in the room. So I'm just gonna ask for people to raise their hand and just tell me, when you hear the word hybrid event, what do you think of? What is a hybrid event? Does anybody want to volunteer? Yeah? Perfect. So what she said was the content is available outside of wherever the speaker is presenting live. Perfect. Anybody else? What does a hybrid event mean to you? Yeah, Natalie. Perfect. So Natalie said people are either physically present or they're available online, or not available, they're attending online. So kind of the same thing. And the answer is, C, all of the above. Hybrid event could mean a couple of different things. And just to sort of, put this into your guys' heads, what I'm talking about, it could be a 1-hour lunch and learn, something super simple. Speaker comes into your company, you live stream it out to a bunch of people on Facebook. Really simple. It could be, live streaming the keynote and recording all of your breakout sessions at a big conference. It could be pre-recorded and then rebroadcasted out later. It doesn't necessarily have to mean the content is happening live. Or it can mean a company meeting with remote employees, an entire internal audience. But that would totally fall under the roof of a hybrid event. So now, okay, just kind of set the stage for event marketers and where they are with hybrid events. Now let's talk for a second about video content marketing and kind of the importance of this and the impact it can have for you guys. So the first stat I'm going to pull out, Wisol, I never know how to say this, Wisol is a video marketing company, and they put out a report, an industry report on this. And what they found is that the average person spends about 90 minutes a day watching video content, which is, if you think about it, that's a long time, but it's totally true for me. I look at my screen time on my phone and I'm like, oh yeah, I watch a lot of videos. 8 out of 10 people have been convinced to buy a product or service after watching a video online. I don't know if that's true for you guys, but it's definitely true for me. This just happened to me yesterday. I was laying on my couch and I was scrolling through Instagram. I saw a 2-minute ad, liked what I saw, clicked the link, watched another video, and then ended up buying into that service. And Eventbrite surveyed some of the people that they work with, and they found that 2 out of 3 people, 67%, are more likely to attend an event after watching a live video. So pretty powerful statistics. I feel like there's a lot of business value that's coming out of videos and a lot of business value that's coming out of event marketing. So what happens when you combine the two? It's pretty powerful stuff. Hold on, I'm gonna take a sip of water. I talk really fast. It makes me thirsty. So there's 2 kind of sides of a hybrid event, right? There's recording your content and making it available later. And then there's also the live streaming side. So I kind of want to go through and talk about the highlights on both of those. So why record? We're all in the events industry. We know how much money is spent on events. There's a lot of money invested in the parties and the food and the decor and the signs and the venue and all sorts of transportation, all sorts of stuff. But the one thing that lasts after all that food has been eaten and all those drinks have been drunk, the one thing that lasts is what you've captured, whether that's photographs or your actual event content. And since your sessions are full of valuable event content, my question to you would be, why wouldn't you capture it so that you can leverage it for use time after time, way after the event has ended, and extend that ROI, extend that return on investment of your 1, 2, 3 day event? And one quick point I do want to talk about is this myth of the 2-minute video. You guys may have heard this before, but somewhere along the way, somebody said, you can never ever post a video that's more than 2 minutes because nobody will watch it. Everyone is super ADD. There's too much competing stuff on the internet. No one's going to watch your video if it's more than 2 minutes long. And so then they did some research, they did some studies to look into what really is the length, the optimal length for a video. And as it turns out, it is true that if your video kind of sucks, No one's gonna watch it for more than 2 minutes. But if your video is high quality, if the audio is good, the visuals are good, the content is engaging, people are happy to watch long form. You just gotta make sure that it's good. So now, why live streaming? This is a little bit of still in a hybrid event, but a little bit of a different side. So with live streaming, since a lot of you guys are kind of new to this realm, I want to address something I hear often, which is live streaming versus a webcast. A lot of people come to me and they're like, well, what's even the difference? I don't know anything. Just so you guys know, there is no real difference. It all means the same thing. If you hear webcast, web streaming, live streaming, it all means just broadcasting over the internet. But one thing I will say, if you want to impress your production company or impress your AV team, live streaming is more of the modern, more colloquially used word. Webcasting is a little bit outdated. So if you ever want to look cool in front of your production company, now you know. One other point I do also want to address is this myth of cannibalization. And I actually hear this almost daily from people that I talk with. People will say, oh, I don't live stream my event because I want them to come in person. I hear this so often, and I really want to challenge this idea for a second. I want you to think to yourself, when is the last time that you saw an event that you wanted to go to? It was in the city that you're in, the city that you live in. You were totally free that night. You had the money or you had the budget to go. You go to buy a ticket, and then you said, oh, they're live streaming? I'm not gonna go, I'm just gonna watch the live stream now. My guess is that that has probably never happened. And that's because there's a huge value to attending events face-to-face. And live streaming is not gonna replace that face-to-face value. There's so much value in networking, in sharing ideas outside of the breakout rooms, of just making new connections and also strengthening existing connections. That's not gonna go away. But what live streaming does is it opens up the door for people that maybe they're not in the same city as you, but they're interested in your event. Maybe they're super busy that night, but they can watch it, at home later. Or maybe they just can't afford it. Maybe they say, I really want to go, but it's not in my budget this year, but I'm going to watch the content. If I get a lot of value, I'm going to make sure it's in the budget next year. So if there's one thing you walk away from today, it's that you no longer believe, if you previously did, that live stream is going to cannibalize your live event attendance. And then the last point there is just the fact that we do live in a global digital world today. And I think it's important for event planners to meet people where they're at. People travel more often. People are starting to demand or expect that things are available digitally. I think it's important for event planners to be prepared for that. All right, cool. So we've kind of just set the stage for the why, kind of laid some groundwork there. Now I know you're all event planners, so now you're like, okay, give me the how. How are we gonna do this? So let's talk about actually crafting your hybrid event. This is the planning stage. Now, and this is what I do in my job, is I sit down with event planners and with event marketers and just help them craft out how their hybrid event is going to look and the strategy to make sure it's successful. And there's 4 questions that I always make sure we get established first. First one is your goals. The reason that you might create a hybrid event might be different per company to company or event to event, or even honestly, session versus session within an event. For some clients, they say, hey, I want to make sure that my keynote has maximum number of views. I don't care who they are. I just want 10,000 people watching it at the same time. Other people might say, we want to leverage this content for marketing goals. So we want to make sure that we are capturing whoever is viewing our content, making sure we get their name or email. Other people might say, hey, my goal is just to make sure my employees see this, but there's some confidential information in here, so I can't let that go out to anybody else. So we'll kind of establish the why, establish the goal of the hybrid event, and then establish some KPIs or key performance indicators. I'll sit down with clients and I'll ask, what does success look like? What is a successful live stream? What is a successful post-event content strategy? And we'll pick out some key performance indicators from there. The second thing is thinking through the online audience. Obviously, you guys are event planners, you know what your in-person audience is. But like I talked about before, the online audience is going to be different than your in-room audience. They're going to be people that maybe live in a different city. Maybe they're in a different time zone. Maybe they speak a different language. Maybe they're at a different point in their career where they're so super busy they can't come in person. Or maybe they're just starting out and they couldn't get budget to come to your event. So you want to think through, who are these people? It's going to be different than the live audience. And then, of course, budget. There's so many different ways that a hybrid event could go. And like anything else, the amount that you can do depends on the amount of your event budget that you're going to dedicate towards live streaming and post-event strategy. And then lastly, assemble your event team. You're going to want to make sure that there are some killer people all working on this live stream together. Obviously, your live stream provider themselves, and then your production company, or maybe your AV company, your marketing team, obviously the event owner and event planners, maybe your web team, depending on how you're going to do this. So I want to make sure that you've got key people in the room that are all working together to make sure that it's successful. Now, I think this is a good place to kind of pause for a second and just ask if there's any questions. I know that I've covered a lot of stuff so far. Any questions so far? All right, cool. I'll just keep cruising along then. So now, okay, we've just kind of set the planning stage out. Now let's talk for a second about the viewer experience. So obviously, you guys are event planners. You spend a lot of time searching for the perfect venue for your event, right? There's a lot of site visits, a lot of like sourcing that goes into choosing your venue. Well, the same is kind of true for your hybrid event as well. You want to think through, what is that digital venue that you're offering your audience? And there's 4 key components there that I always make sure that my clients think through. The first is the audience reach. Do you have an existing online audience? Where are they? Do you have a big amount of subscribers on YouTube, or a big amount of followers on Facebook? Are you just starting out and just building your online audience now? Maybe we take a different strategy there. So thinking through where your audience is at, where they hang out, both, their age, their technology experience, existing communities, etc. And then security. Do you want it to be super easy for people to access your keynote? Then I might recommend we live stream onto YouTube. Do you want to put this behind a marketing gate? Make sure that you're capturing the names and emails of people that are watching your videos? Then I might suggest something else. The company that I work for, Evia, we're platform agnostic. So what that means is we can live stream to any platform or help our clients build a custom platform. So it's my job to understand all of the things that are important to them so that I can make a good recommendation. Or actually, another point of security is the information confidential? Do you need to be sure that only a key 100 people can access it and nobody else can access it? Do you want single sign-on through your company's organization? So things like that are things that we'll want to make sure that we understand before we select where the content is going to live. And then branding and control. I have some clients that say, hey, I don't care where it is, I just want it to be easy to find. So we'll say, great, YouTube or Facebook could work, but you don't have control over what that page or that experience looks like. It just looks like the YouTube page with whatever content is on the side. Or they say, no, I need everything to be super branded with all of my colors and have it look like an extension of my event website. Great, that's a different strategy there. So thinking through the branding control. And then, of course, budget. What is in your budget for, because there's different features and functionalities that might exist on this video platform. Want to make sure that it can be something that hits everything that you want in terms of reach, security, branding, and control, and fits your budget. So that's the platform side of things. Then the actual video, there's a couple of different ways that you can present this content. The first one I'm showing you is the switched program. So that's going to be your more highly produced, kind of fancier, upscale, high-end version of your presentation where you'll have maybe multiple camera angles and you'll have a live director on site that's switching between camera angles and switching to a video feed or a presentation feed. So kind of what you would see on TV even. Switch program with a live director. The second one is, we call it multi-source. You might have heard picture-in-picture. It's where the speaker is on one side of the screen and the presentation or video feed, or data feed is on the other side of the screen, and the viewer can see both simultaneously. And then the last one is data only, so not having a camera in the room, just capturing whatever's happening on the projector in sync with audio. And this is one that I usually recommend to my tech clients that are doing maybe trainings on a software, or maybe there's coding involved. The online audience doesn't necessarily need to see the speaker for that stuff. It's just important that they see what's happening on the screen. Excuse me. Then, of course, there's things that, obviously, you guys are event planners. You know how to prep your speakers and how to create a really engaging experience for a live audience. But there's a couple of things that you'll want to think through if you're also incorporating an online audience. The first one is lighting, obviously making sure that the speaker is lit up so that it comes across in the camera, you're not hiding behind any shadows, or you're not looking too washed out on the camera either. Second one is speaker marks. So, I've seen presentations and speakers before where they say, hey, I'm gonna zigzag, come off the stage, zigzag through the audience, talk around, walk around. But then on the camera, it's kind of hard to follow them. It doesn't translate that well for the online audience, even though it's super engaging and super fun for the in-person audience. So to prep your speaker, say, hey, there's an online audience. Make sure the camera can follow you from here to here. Make sure you don't come out of that zone. And wardrobe. I know a lot of speakers will choose to wear black because it's, slimming or sophisticated or whatever. But what might happen is your stage, and this often happens, the stage is dark behind them. And it looks totally fine in person because in person you can see that nuance of texture and that nuance of lighting that doesn't translate so well on the camera. So making sure your speaker is aware, thinking through their outfit in that sense. And any sort of small checkered prints might create a little bit of vibration or moire on the screen. And then lastly is Q&A. This one's super important for two reasons. The first one is you'll want to make sure that if anybody asks a question or says something in the in-room audience, that the online audience can see them. So if somebody says something and they don't have a mic, make sure that the speaker is repeating the question into the microphone so that the online audience can understand what happens. Otherwise, there's just an awkward 60 seconds of silence, and then the speaker's like, yeah, that's a good point, so anyway. And the online audience is like, what just happened? Then the second side of that is making sure that you're engaging that online audience so that if they have any questions, there's a moderator on site that can relay those questions from the online community to the speaker themselves. Okay, so now we went through the planning stage, we went through the viewer experience. Now let's talk about what this means for event marketers themselves, how to turn your attendees into loyal fans. So successful event marketers know that to really achieve their goals around brand loyalty, they need to leverage this content to create a community. Your sessions at your event, your speakers, they do an amazing job of starting these conversations. They do an amazing job of planting these seeds. But what happens afterwards? My question to you, or my challenge to you is, what are you doing to create power members or power users of either your service or your client's service? What are you doing to engage them after the event is over? Because there's so much great stuff that happens at these events. But then once everybody goes home, what is there to unite them later, to keep those conversations alive, to keep them pushing forward? Your speakers do a great job of humanizing whatever ideas that you're talking about. But if you're not recording it and you're not leveraging it later, there's nowhere else for it to go, and those conversations kind of die. So the best way, my most successful clients, they're the ones that spend a lot of time and a lot of energy creating what they call fan clubs. They do a really great job of creating people that get super excited about whatever it is that brought them to that event, whether it's a product or a service or an idea or some sort of thought leadership part. And they do a really great job of bringing people together afterwards, keeping those conversations alive online, and using this amazing content to drive this forward. There's no reason to just you should create content over and over again, but you should be leveraging this existing content that happens at events. Because if you're building curiosity, you're planting those seeds, you're getting people excited about an idea, and then you're giving them a platform to keep those conversations going, then you're building fans and you're building loyalty. And I want to talk for a second about a case study of one group that I work with that does an amazing job with this. It's a tech company, and kind of as I was talking before, they started out sponsoring events. They said, great, that worked out really well for us. Then in 2017, they decided to host their own event. In this instance, it was a user conference for people that use their software or people that are just interested in learning more about their software. And they decided to live stream the keynotes, record all of the breakout sessions, and kind of what I was referencing before about the cannibalization piece, what they found is, despite having all of that stuff available online, their event ended up doubling between 2017 to 2018. Now, this coming year, 2019, they had outgrown their previous venue and upgrading to the convention center in their city. But what they did is they used that event content to create different communities segmented by different groups of people that are interested in different things. And they were able to use their event content, their event videos, to keep those conversations going, to create forums and to create tools for people to understand their product better, to understand what they offer better. And the event planner, she had a really great quote. She said, when our customers have that light bulb moment with our software, they become obsessed. And they gave their audience a tool that helped flip that switch. They made it easier for their clients to become totally obsessed with them. And it's been so successful that as they continue to grow, they're looking at ways to use this content to introduce other events and their sales team in new markets around the US. So I talked about a lot of stuff today. I'm going to pause for a second before I conclude and ask you guys for any questions, any thoughts, any ideas that you're having. I know I just covered quite a bit of stuff. Yeah, Cindy. Actually, Cindy, I'm going to have you use the microphone so I can practice what I preach.
Yeah, I have a question about how you integrate registration between live event registration and the virtual event registration. And just, I would love to hear a little bit more than just, yes or whatever. But I mean, do you do it at the same time? Do you launch it at the same time? Do you wait and launch virtual later? Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Perfect. So registration. So the first question that I would always ask is always, what is the end goal? And maybe in this instance, it's, hey, we're going to charge a ticket. We're going to charge one ticket level to come to the live event. Then we're going to charge a secondary ticket level as like a virtual pass, which quite a number of my clients actually do. And they'll leverage their same registration platform. So whether that's Cvent or Eventbrite, whatever it is, they'll create those ticket tiers. And then, my job is to make sure that all of those technologies are talking so that only people that have paid for the event are able to access the online content later. And that's a big advantage of working with a live streaming provider, is they'll make sure that all of those technologies are speaking to each other, and so that whole flow, that whole registration process ends up being super smooth. Because you're right, this is such a new thing. not all registration platforms work with all platform, like live streaming platforms. And so that is one of my goals, is making sure that if using your registration platform and making that super easy for your clients is important, let's make sure that we have that platform, that video platform experience that is super smooth and super easy, because you don't want extra stuff on your plate as an event planner, right? Did that kind of answer your question? Perfect. What other questions do you guys have? Yeah, here, let me give you the mic.
So what kind of tips or information would you give to a client or when they have this is something they want to do, they're interested in, but they're afraid that their attendees aren't tech savvy enough, or they don't have maybe the right audience or crowd to pick it up, even though they think the content would be of interest. They're like, people won't know what to do, or they're too much older to understand or be interested in this kind of content. So what kind of tips do you have for that?
I mean, I think my first question, and this kind of goes back to what I talked about, or even how I answered Cindy's question, would be why? If my question would be, what would be the ultimate goal in wanting to record content if maybe there's not a huge demand from the audience, unless they're saying, hey, we want to go after new people. We want to go after a new, maybe more tech-savvy audience, or maybe a younger audience, whatever it may be. And then because that would be a brand new audience, that would be a whole different strategy than maybe trying to engage the online or their existing audience. But what I would also say to that is, why not go and ask the audience? Maybe there's certain assumptions that are being made that maybe could be proven false. Maybe you could do a survey and try to get a feel for the existing audience. How much demand is there? You might be surprised and find like, oh wow, people would really leverage this just from doing a simple survey or a little bit of data collection. Or you might find they say, no way, this is something that's way over their head, this is not for us. And then maybe you don't do that, or maybe you do it and you just focus on building a new audience. So I would totally sit down and think that through, be like, what are we trying to solve for? Who are we trying to target? Is it our existing audience, or is it a new audience here? Did that kind of answer your question? Okay, perfect. Yeah, hold on, I'll give you, sorry, so this one's first, then you. Sound good?
Okay, so we are currently webcasting and live streaming things. And when you mentioned that your company either works with people to find an event platform that's working for their webcast or designing one, what exactly does that mean? Because we currently use Adobe Connect, and it's not my favorite. I don't enjoy it at all. It's their tech support's really terrible. They don't really have very much. And then the issues that we are having, they swear it's on our end and not theirs, and I know it's on their end. So what does that mean when you say that?
Well, that's awesome, because you are my favorite kind of person to work for then. Because, yeah, like I said before, there are quite a number of existing platforms out there. Adobe Connect is one, although my understanding of Adobe Connect, that's more of a webinar platform rather than a broadcasting platform, but it's been a little bit of time since I've actually sat down with Adobe Connect. But then there are options to build your own. And this is something that we've seen with a lot of our clients who have been doing this for a few years. They're like, okay, we're using, platform A. It's been working okay, but we really want to take this to the next level. And we want to integrate not only just our single event content, but all of our video content into one kind of video content management system. And that's something our team actually has an in-house development team that has a lot of experience in developing these sort of proprietary, these sort of customized systems that can operate whatever functionality they want on the front end, but then also work with all of their existing systems, like Cindy talked about with registration, on the back end. And that's something that, our team has a lot of experience with. It's something they've done for quite a number of tech companies and a couple of associations as well. Did that kind of answer your question? Okay, cool. What other questions? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I told you I was going to come to you, and then I totally forgot.
Well, I always feel like you learn from your mistakes better than if you just got away with it and it was successful. So can you share some, I don't know, things really not to do?
Ooh, good question. Let's see, things not to do. Actually, so this is something that me and my team were laughing about a few minutes ago because I don't know what happened in the month of February, but all these people decided that they wanted to add live streaming to their event at the last second. And they decided to bring us in, like in one instance, literally the night before. In other instances, even just a week before. So I would say don't do that. I mean, if you really do decide that you want to live stream, obviously you can. But if you want it to be super successful, I would say really invest in thinking through, like really planning it out, thinking through what you want, thinking through what your goals are, and then incorporating that into your event every step of the way. There are reasons why people might want to add it to the last minute, and that makes sense. In one instance, it was actually because of the snow. They had like 10% of their audience say, we can't go because of snow. So they said, hey, Evia, can you come in and live stream this for them? So that made sense. And in their instance, they didn't need it to be perfect because it was just weather related. But I would say, don't try to, you can add it last minute. I would say don't make that your go-to strategy, though. Really think through how you want it and make sure that you are planning it out, using the right partners to make sure that it's successful. And then I would say, going along with that, making sure that you have that marketing strategy in place, making sure people know where to find the live stream, making sure that they're prepared for it. Kind of like your question before when you're like, this might be the first time they're doing this, making sure that you're just making it super easy for that audience as well. Natalie.
I'm curious with the clients you have right now, how many of them have content that's being live streamed but that needs to be secured or closed content, and what are the considerations and kind of how do you approach that when that is required?
Yeah, that actually happened with that company I mentioned before where 10% of the people couldn't come because of the snow. It actually was a company meeting where they were sharing financial information, things that they don't want to get out. And so in their instance, what we did is we got a list of every single employee, all of their email addresses, and we made sure that only those people could log into our platform. And there's other ways that you can do this too. There's single sign-on, so some companies might have an existing single sign-on account, and they can just use that, almost like an Office 360 account if you're familiar with that, or even like your Google account. And then like Google or Microsoft or Okta, whatever that company is, will authenticate, okay, this person is who they say that they are, they're allowed to come in and watch this live stream, but nobody else can. Did that kind of make sense? Because you're right, that does happen a lot where security is a concern, and you'll want to make sure that you're putting those security measures in place so that only authorized users can get in. Yeah. No, yeah, ask your question.
This is more maybe ethical, but in the event where Natalie pointed out it's confidential, how do you tactfully take people's cell phones away so that they can't use them? What have you ever had to create a policy or speak to that?
So you're saying if there's someone in the room who's like illegally live streaming, basically. Oh, that's a good question. I don't, because I deal so much on the online side, I've never thought about if someone's illegally streaming from the in-room experience. Like, do you just have security come in and tackle them? No, probably don't do that. Yeah, to be totally honest, I've never thought about it from that side before. I did hear an interesting story from somebody else, a production company, where they had an intern who they allowed her to go into a secure event. I forget what the event was, but they allowed her to go in, and this was back in the early days of Twitter, and this intern tweeted out about the event, which was a huge no-no, and then obviously she got fired, and the production company got fired from the event. So yeah, I don't actually have a good answer to your question, because I'm not usually on that side of things, but that's definitely something to think about. For media planners, you'd want it in the speaker contract? Yeah. So you're even talking about if speakers want to live stream their own stuff? No, a speaker has proprietary Oh, right. You're saying it might exist in the contract already with the speaker. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, I guess you got to keep a vigilant eye out and make sure your audience isn't trying to scam the system. Oh, and signage. That's true. I've seen that before where it's like, hey, there's absolutely no photography or video allowed at this session. Or table tents, yeah, that just remind people. That's true. I'm sure nobody would do that with ill intent. They would just maybe be like, oh, I'm going to Snapchat this and not really think through the legal implications of that. Natalie.
I did have a second question. I was just considering like a budget approach for a hybrid event. And if someone wanted to live stream and have digital attendees at the same time, but their budget also, they were considering using content for marketing at a later time. I feel like those video angles are really different in terms of like priority. Whereas like if you used it in an ad, you'd want it to have cool point of view and different angles, and it'd be different priority. Is it often that you recommend like 2 camera crews? Can you use 1 camera crew? How often does that come up?
So you're saying one is more of a straight recording, then another one is more of like a highlight reel kind of thing, like for marketing later. Yeah, actually, we get that request pretty often where we will record, we call them ISO feeds. Basically, it's all of the camera angles are recorded in an isolated format. And then later, us or a video or an internal video production company, they can go in and kind of take all of those different angles and kind of piece it together to create something really jazzy and for marketing later, as opposed to just that switched program feed that got live streamed originally. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, that does happen super often, actually. Yeah. Okay, Chase again, and then I forget your name, Ariel.
Okay, so from your experience with people that are live, that are live streaming and recording, and then doing in-person attendees, do you often find clients are charging a different price for people who are in the room versus webcasting? Because we currently charge the same price, and we get a little bit of pushback. They're like, "Why am I paying?" But it's from the event planner. I'm telling them like the only thing you'd be saving is like $50 because the food. So it's like it's not enough to like really pull back. But like, what is your experience with like these clients that are also doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously, at the end of the day, you should totally do what makes sense for you guys and your budget and your audience. But what I've seen in my experience is that people do charge different price points. They might charge, and there's really no set formula for this, but they might charge, 2x for an in-person experience and then just 1x for the online audience. And that ratio is not always true. I've seen quite a number of different things. And I've also seen plenty of people that say, hey, we're going to obviously charge one price for the entire normal live experience, make the keynotes available for free, and then charge for all of the breakout sessions later and charge maybe charge a small amount if you didn't attend live, make it free, or charge a different amount if you did attend live. So I've seen quite a couple of different things before. And I would say typically there usually is a price difference. But again, you should do what makes sense for your event, your audience, your budget, all that fun stuff. Okay, Ariel, I know you were next, and then in the pink shirt, and then Gina. Perfect. We got a cue going.
So my question is, if you have experience or any advice on bringing in, rather than broadcasting your speaker to a large audience, we've had ideas or requests where we want to bring in like a classroom. So we work with a lot of post-secondary. So they want to stream the classroom into the session so that this classroom of students can kind of be live, ask questions, and participate remotely with the session. So is that something you've done, and how would you see that being successful?
And so just so I can kind of paint the picture of, or make sure test my understanding of what you're describing, basically you're saying have a normal breakout room just like this, have a screen with maybe one camera view of a bunch of students sitting in a classroom, and then have those students have a chance to come in and ask questions over audio. I would say that's actually a really awesome, super cool, unique idea. I don't know if I have any experience in doing that, which is super cool because that means that you're the first person to have thought of it that way. But I bet you in just a few years that's going to be super normal, or that's how like online classrooms kind of turn to. The one thing to consider with that is that you would need to have someone really good at audio to kind of manage the speaker's microphone and then queuing up the classroom audio without having weird feedback or overlap there. But there's no reason why anything's possible. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. I haven't seen that done before with that two-way communication. It would definitely be an extra layer of planning and preparation and making sure your production company and AV company is on the audio. But that's a really cool idea. Oh, Colleen, did you want to add to that? Yeah. Yeah, Colleen said you could have an in-person moderator who can relay the questions via typing. Perfect. And then I think you were next, and then Gina. Sorry, if you don't mind just passing down the microphone. Perfect.
I was just going to piggyback on his comment about the pricing, and just had the idea that if the intention is to grow your conference the following year, you could certainly charge the same amount or some sort of discounted amount, but then maybe apply that towards a discounted registration for next year's conference too.
I also was going to comment on Chase's comment about the pricing. So we host a lot of streaming events and webinars, and we charge for some of them, and others are free for our members. And we base the pricing on the content and the popularity of whatever the issue is. And we recognize that there may be multiple people watching that streaming video. And so if I have one person paying to come in person, come to the face-to-face event, and they're paying $45 to come, that was $45 for that one person, and you're staying at your office and there's going to be 6 people watching, I'm not going to charge you $45. So we charge more sometimes for the webinar or the streaming, because we recognize there may be a whole, room full of people watching it. So it depends on what the issue is, and we have lots of meetings that lead up to our pricing. But I just wanted to mention that you have to keep that in mind. What you're selling to multiple people potentially when you're streaming. And then I also wanted to talk about her idea of streaming in something to a session. We tried that one time, and it wasn't intentional. It wasn't planned. Our speaker was from the East Coast, and his schedule was conflicting with our schedule after we contracted him. And he would not budge to meet our demands and meet the contract obligations he had to us. And the only option he gave us was, I'll stream in. So we streamed in. We spent a lot of money on having, it so that it was interactive. And it was a big flop. The technology was awesome and it worked out well. We got what we paid for, but our audience didn't appreciate it. And we saw people leaving in large numbers. It was not good. So the front of the room, I'm sure from the speaker's perspective, he could see just the people in the front, of the ballroom, and it looked like he had a great audience. But from the back of the room, it was pretty scarce. So. Right.
And that's why I do say nothing. I really don't see live events ever being replaced even by technology, because you're right, there's so much value in this face-to-face interaction, bringing people into one room. It was a real shame that he couldn't be there in person, because I bet he probably would have drawn a big crowd if he had been there in the room. So that's kind of frustrating. Linda.
We were just talking here among us, but we just had a client that actually had to do something similar, and it takes a lot of planning and work and people who know what they're doing on the to make sure that you think of all those things, because there's so many variables that can go wrong. Now ours ended up turning out really well for our client, but it did require us flying a team somewhere to be there, to produce it on site, to have people back on the other end to make sure that there was not much latency with the sound and things like that. So
yeah, that is what I'll add, is if you're doing something on Skype where it's someone in their office on their little Apple headphones, it's just not going to be the same experience as having that high quality produced, even if it is high quality produced and then live streamed out more of at that production level, that's going to be definitely a step above some guy in his home office. Not some guy, but someone in their home office. Mhm. Yeah. Well, and it was your audience that wanted to do a live event. You know that it would be very different if they knew they were signing up for a live stream and they were kind of in that mindset or kind of self-selected into that group. Did I see a question over here? Or did I make that up? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right, totally. Yeah, it's all about expectations. It's all about, yeah, so that's a shame that that happened. Olivia.
I have a question more about the back end, like if you need to track CEUs and rather than just letting them log in and access everything, is there a way to see what they're actually watching? And then can you take it a step further and value your content? Like if people are abandoning halfway through a certain training so you know how to improve it for next year, how detailed can you get? And is that through the live stream company or is that through some integration?
Yes, the answer to your question is yes, that is absolutely possible, and that does exist today. At Evia, we have our own like live streaming platform, and the analytics with that is assuming that they supplied their information, either through a marketing gate or through a registration gate. If they supply their information, we can attach an email address to who watched we can attach your email address to what sessions that you watched, what time you logged in, and what time you logged out. So we can see, okay, you watched about 30 minutes of this hour-long presentation. Oh, and it looks like the majority of people kind of dipped out at this 30-minute mark. And you can make some more, either give your speakers some feedback or make some tweaks or suggestions for next year, or even for the recording, maybe edit that video so that it's just the first 30 minutes, as an example. You can make some good insights into what people are interested in, or even maybe just create a soundbite, like, okay, people dropped off at this point. It was probably because this was the most engaging part. We'll pull this out as a soundbite. And then for the CEU tracking, you can also say, okay, this person logged in, they watched the session for an hour, they are granted this credit for watching this video or attending this session. And we have quite a few clients who do that as well. What, Natalie?
I hate taking the mic from you so much. I'm a huge Darcy fan, so that's why I keep asking questions. But since it was a community conversation, I just wanted to address Ariel's question because my first job out of college was at the Washington State Bar Association, and part of my job was doing webcast management, which included like going in between video clips and like literally representing the online attendee and like asking questions and engaging the speaker. So there is a way to do that, but it takes, like Darcy said, an entire team. The people that are devoted to that, especially if it's a paid attendee thing, they have to feel like they're just as engaged as the people in the room. And I'll talk to you about it more offline, but like it took a whole team. Like there's someone that's managing the AV that's just for them. There's someone that's monitoring the chat. There's someone that's like keeping track of the speaker, of actually engaging the online attendee and not just those in the room, because it's all about perception when you're having both parties pay for that. And then I was gonna, because I had the issue with payment as well. I forgot his name. What was it? Oh, in terms of like payment, if it's the same price, if they're a webcast or not, we had that come up all the time, and I think it's all about perception. Like, if the first registration just talks about, okay, you're going to go to this and you're getting the booklet, and both in live and online, and then doing a package that's like, and here's the lunch, and then you could actually make more money. Like, as long as they're perceiving they're getting the same thing and then opting into lunch, it's totally fine. I would just split it out, and then you make more money too. So that's cool. Sorry, it was. Yeah.
Thank you for adding to that. And I didn't talk about this too much in the context of this presentation because this was hybrid events, but I mentioned before in 2013 when I started that online conference for women leaders. And because that was all online, just like Natalie said, it required a very dedicated team to make sure that all of our speakers were very prepared for this unique format that, especially in 2013, a lot of speakers were not prepared or didn't have a lot of experience presenting virtually, and then keeping the online audience engaged, keeping up with any tech questions or confusions that would come up. You're so right. It took a massive team, and even we were a small team, so we had to wear a million different hats all at the same time. But there's a lot that goes into that. And I didn't really get into that because that's truly just online. This is more talking about if your speaker is live and your audience is online. But there's a lot of ways that a hybrid event could look. Any other questions? I feel like there's a lot of questions on this side of the room, this side of the room. You guys have any questions? We covered so much. I'm actually really glad that you guys had so many questions and everyone was able to piggyback off each other. That's the whole point of this stuff, bringing people together and starting these conversations. Cool. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll just kind of wrap up then. So in conclusion, what did we talk about today? We talked about how events plus video equals your strongest business value for your event, for your company. We talked about a step-by-step guide and best practices to crafting your own hybrid event. And then we talked about making it easy for clients or members or whoever your audience is to have that aha moment and give them content to fuel your curiosity. Your power users or your power members are your best advocates. So my best recommendation is to give them a way to keep these conversations going even after the event is over. And that's it. There's no more. Oh, there's a system update. No. Awesome. But that is it. There is no more. So thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you so much for your great questions. You guys are an amazing audience. Thank you so much. If you do have any other questions or comments, I'm going to be hanging around here for a little bit. And Linda right here has some business cards if you want to stay in touch with me. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of MPI. Hope to see you guys at the gala tonight.